What is up, YouTube? This is Dragunity, your chap with the cap, back again for another video. And this time we're going to be talking about a deck I've been wanting to revisit for a while. My beloved Dragunities. Do you see it? Do you see the love? This is a deck I've been wanting to reprofile for a while. For those of you who may have noticed, I've been profiling it once a format because this is the one I've been changing the most. Most of my other decks, I don't really see much room for change. I see definite room for improvement, but not much room for change. Dragunities, on the other hand, have kind of been crippled ever since the loss of Ravine, but then we did get it back, and I did highlight that along with the Spear of Destiny. However, it was still only at one Ravine, and as I've been finding out since then, MST has become a much bigger threat to me because of it. And I suppose we used the Galaxy Cyclone as well, but the point stands. It's not everything I had kind of hoped it would have been. However, with the Secret Forces having was the Secret Forces? No, Crossed Souls, I apologize, wrong set. With Crossed Souls having recently come out, the Dragunity deck has gotten some much needed power. Or at least mine has, and now it is back at the top of its game. I truly haven't seen it this good since I had 3 Ravines and 3 Tempest. And honestly, I kind of like this version a bit better just because I feel like it really is more of a reflection of myself as opposed to a reflection of any Dragunity player ever. I can safely say I don't think there's anyone out there that has Dragunity deck quite like mine. They're more minor changes, but it still feels more like a reflection of how I enjoy playing. So, without any further ado, enough of the chit-chat, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? So, starting off our list, we have not 1, not 2, but your standard 3 Dragunity decks. Now, as I've said before, for those of you who don't know how Dragunities work, or it's your first time seeing it, or whatever, the way that they work is that they are a synchro-based deck. Dux is one of the 2 key points to it. The other one is the 2 copies of Dragunity Phalanx. Now, the way that the primary combo works is that you need Phalanx in the graveyard. Dux will normal summon, his effect will activate, which will then equip Phalanx from the graveyard onto him as an equip spell, and then Phalanx's effect activates that special summons him from the spell and trap card zone. So then you have your level 4 non-tuner and your level 2 tuner. And that's pretty much how they work. For those veteran Dragunity players wondering, what the hell, man, how come you're only running 2 Phalanx? Everyone runs 3 now. Well, honestly, I have enough means of getting him into the graveyard that I don't want to draw him. 2 is fine again. I really don't need any more than this. People act like we lost our main thing, but we had Dragon Shrine to kind of keep us going, which kind of serves the purpose of getting Phalanx into the graveyard, so we never really lost that. So I do run a combination of Dragon Shrine and Dragon Ravine, so I can get Phalanx. I can get rid of Phalanx pretty easily. It's not really an issue. On top of Dux, I also run 1 copy of Dragunity Legionnaire, just because he can also, like Dux, grab Dragunity monsters out of the graveyard and equip it to him. Again, a tip for people who may not know how Dragunities work, they can only grab Dragon-type monsters, specifically Dragon-type Dragunity monsters, or at least the low-level ones. There are some exceptions, but that's pretty much how Legionnaire and Dux work. And they're your 2 primary winged beast monsters. Actually, I think they're... Well, no, there are other winged beasts, but within the archetype, these are the only ones that really count for anything. He has a slightly different effect, though, in that he can destroy 1 face-up monster, I believe it is, and that your opponent controls by sending 1 card in your spell and trap card zone to the graveyard. It doesn't have to be equipped to him, he can just send it. So you can have him out already, summon a Dux, Dux gets Phalanx, and then Legionnaire can get rid of Dux's Phalanx in order to pop an opponent's card. Oh, also one thing I may have forgotten to mention is that Dux gains plus 200 for every Dragunity card on the field. So it doesn't matter where it is, what it is, it can be himself. If Dragunity is in the name, 200 buff. It's not the biggest effect in the world, but it's one that's commonly underlooked. Turns that little 15 over there into at least 17, and sometimes bigger depending on how you do it. Anyway, I also run 1 copy of Dragunity Brandistock. Not a lot of people like to run this guy. However, he is necessary for the Spear of Destiny OTK, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Basically, what he does is that while he's equipped to a monster, that monster can attack twice each battle phase, which is actually really good. He does also have the benefit of being a level 1 tuner monster, but you'll rarely use that. Again, your primary tuner is going to be Phalanx right here. He's the easiest to get out. I also run one copy of Atlas for Legionnaire combos. For those of you guys who don't know how that works, what it is that Dragunity Atlas has the distinct ability of, when it is normal summoned, to be able to special summon a Dragunity monster from your hand and then have Atlas be equipped to said monster. So, either by summoning Atlas and then having him be equipped to Legionnaire that way, or by summoning Legionnaire and grabbing Atlas from the graveyard, either way, you need Legionnaire and Atlas together on the field, Atlas being in a spell trap card zone. You activate Legionnaire's effect, send Atlas, pop a face-up card, then Atlas's effect activates in the graveyard, which states that when this card, while equipped to a monster, is sent to the graveyard, you can target one card on the field and destroy it. That can does not exist in there because that effect is mandatory, so you need to be careful while using the Legionnaire Atlas combo, because it can backfire and it can bite you in the ass. Let's see. Next up, I run the 2 copies of Dragunity Armor Mistletoe. I've kind of been going back and forth on this guy between 2 and 3 just because he is a necessary centerpiece of the deck. However, without the means to special summon him out, he can be kind of cloggy, and I don't really need that in this deck. For now, I'm going with 2. I was running 3, but I'm just trying out 2 now that I have a bit more searchability in the deck. Just seeing how that works for now. It's working alright. I can't really complain yet. I haven't seen any notable differences. Anyway, that's it for the Dragunity monster lineup. Now I move on to the other monsters outside the archetype. One Garuda the Wind Spirit, just to kind of help with getting out that Winged Beast non-tuner. Fun fact, every single Dragunity Synchro monster requires a Winged Beast non-tuner and a Dragon-type tuner monster, so something to bear in mind. So we need plenty of special summonable Wind Beast-type monsters in order to compensate for ducks if we can't do that. And he works pretty nicely. I can just banish a ducks I've already used since this deck has pretty much no recycling ability whatsoever, and just use him like that. And he's pretty common, especially in the Wombo combo. Another good Winged Beast is Blackwing Zephyros the Elite. He can bring himself back from the graveyard by bouncing a face-up card you control and taking 400, but you can only do it once per duel. However, it's still pretty helpful because, again, level 4 Winged Beast. Also, you can use that effect in order to bounce Dragon's Ravine and get its effect off twice in one turn, which is kind of a cool thing to be able to do. I personally haven't yet had a need to do it, but it's cool to know I at least can. I didn't do that much when Ravine was a thing, but that's because I didn't really think that far ahead. I was still new to it. It's kind of scary to think I was still relatively new to the deck when rulers were still a thing. Anyway, I run one copy of Red Eyes Darkness Metal because there are big dragons in this deck. That's pretty much what the extra deck is, and I'd like to be able to get them back, thank you. Now for some of the more interesting techs. I believe I showed them to you last time. I could be wrong, though. I run 2 copies of Card Trooper. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. First is that he's able to mill off cards into the graveyard, which is kind of nice when I need to get my tuners in there. Though my tuners make up a relatively small amount, so I'm sure you guys are thinking, why is he in there then? I'll get to that later. Also, the being able to draw a card thing is kind of nice, but the main thing that I need him for is to be a level 3 monster with less than 500 attack. Why, you ask? Debris Dragon, that's why. Yes, I run a Debris Dragon engine in here specifically so that I can get off 7-star synchro plays. I'll show you guys the monsters that I have for that lineup, but that's pretty much just what it's for, is that it's just to go into some of my level 7 plays. And the fact that he has 2,000 defense isn't bad either. And he is also, actually, fun fact, if used, not with Card Trooper, but with Arma Mistletoe over here, I can make a Trident Dragon. And that is a fun OTK right there. But enough on that. I'm sure you guys are wondering why else I run the Card Trooper if I only have it for the tuners. It's not only for the tuners. As I said, Cross Souls offered some pretty good support for me. Yeah. And that support is the 3 copies of Harpy's Harpist. Or Harpy Harpist, rather. This level 4 monster, again, another winged beast, so potential non-tuner target. And also the strongest normal monster that I have without effects, so 1700 is pretty good. But the main reason I have her is for her secondary effect. I could care less about her first effect, that's harpy stuff. Secondary effect is that during the end phase, if this card was sent to the graveyard this turn, then I can add one level 4 winged beast monster with 1500 or less attack. Who do I know that fits that bill? Oh yeah, Dragunity Ducks right here. Level 4, Winged Beast, 1500 or less. Harpy Harpist was, for a long time on DevPro, my substitute for Dragon Ravine's searching ability, and it worked phenomenally. And now that I have Harpy Harpist with Dragon Ravine, wow, the possibilities are endless. I can literally ditch a Harpy Harpist, get Ducks at the end of the turn, and I could have ditched Harpy Harpist for Ravine's effect to grab another Ducks. So that's 2 Ducks I have access to. I can set up one play one turn and be ready for the next play the other turn. It's actually pretty cool to be able to do that. But again, it just kind of also gives me some more variety for card troopers, so I don't always have to worry about dropping good cards. I was skeptical of it before Harpist came out because I didn't have too many, but now it's more balanced itself out. I usually do get decent mills. Not always good, but, you know, combining the tuners, Zephyros, and Harpist, I can usually get some pretty decent mills. That's it for the monster count. Now we move on to the spells. Starting off, I have everyone's least favorite support Dragunities I've ever gotten. Dragunity Divine Lance. Just realized I was calling it Spirit Destiny. Sorry, I'm still used to the OCG name for it. Now, not a lot of people like this because this didn't really address the issue Dragunities were facing when Ravine was still banned. And it kind of gave us false hope that Ravine was coming back a format early, and it did not. But I still like it just because it does open up a hilarious OTK. The way that works is... Let me explain how this works first, the card. You can only equip with Dragunity monsters, and it gains attack equal to its own level times 100. It is also unaffected by trap cards, which is pretty nice, but I guess plays a minor role in the OTK. The main thing about it is that during your main phase, you can equip one Dragon-type Dragunity monster, tuner monster, from your deck to the equipped monster. However, you can only use this effect once per turn. Now, here's how that combo works. What you're going to do is you're going to obviously do your Duck shenanigans, get Phalanx, Synchro Summon into Vajrayana, your pretty much main go-to Synchro monster. You're then going to get back Phalanx, presumably. Then you're going to equip one Divine Lance. So now you're going to be up to 2500 and will be immune to traps. You're thinking, well, great, but what does that do for me? Afterwards, you're going to activate Lance's effect in order to grab from the deck. Wait for it. Ta-da! One Brandastock. The Brandastock, to be precise. Now, you have a 2500 monster that can attack twice. What you're thinking, that's wonderful and all, that's still not really an OTK. That's only 5k. Well, hold on, cowboys. I'm not done with you yet. Next, you're going to activate Vajrayana's effect. Remember how this thing still has a Phalanx equipped to it by its own effect? Well, you then send that Phalanx to the graveyard to activate Vajrayana's other effect, which doubles its attack until the end phase. So now you have a trap immune 5k monster that can attack twice. The Divine Lance OTK, ladies and gentlemen, and how I justify still running this card, even at 2. It pulls its weight, it's saved me in countless duels. I would feel bad if I ever got rid of it. But enough of the worst support card ever. Let's talk about the best now. The one copy of Dragon Ravine. I've missed you, baby. I've missed you. Sorry. For those of you who don't understand why this is the greatest card ever created for Dragunities, what it does is that once per turn during your main phase, you can discard one card to activate one of the following effects. You either add one level 4 or lower Dragunity monster from your deck to your hand, so search power, or you can send a Dragon-type monster from your deck to your graveyard. The reason it got banned, because Dragon Wars abused the hell out of that second effect. However, for a good Dragunity user, you're really only ever going to be using that secondary effect once, to get Phalanx into the graveyard and then just search for your Duxes, or Legionnaires, or whatever the hell it is you need. you're usually not going to use it more than once. So for us, it was kind of a slap in the face. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't understand why it was banned. And then to kind of help me get to it faster, I run 1 copy of Terraforming. I was running 2 for a while, but I don't know. I just kind of felt a bit more cloggy, especially with how fragile Dragon Ravine really is. And so I just figured I'd try and put in something a little different, if you will. I'll get to that later. And just see if it still works. It still works fine. I've learned to adapt the deck so that I don't need to rely on Dragon Ravine. It's more helpful than essential. So that kind of helps out a bit. I also run 2 copies of Cards of Consonance, because there are, I believe, 5 viable targets in the deck. There's the 2 Phalanx, the Brandistock, the Atlas, and the Debris Dragon, so yeah, that's 5. So I have plenty of targets to validate the 2 Cards of Consonance, and draw power is always good. And then also have 2 Dragon Shrines, as promised. Again, to kind of help get Phalanx into the graveyard, or whoever else I may need. Maybe I need Atlas there. Maybe I need Brandistock there. Who knows? Either way, this card helps me get them there faster, even without having to rely on Dragon Ravine. Best part is, this can't be negated with MST. Or can't be stopped with MST, rather. MST never negates. But you get the idea. Now for that card that I was talking about that has replaced the second Terraforming, and is a little sillier. 1 black and white Wave. One thing I've noticed while watching myself duel all this time with Dragunities, I really like to Xyz summon with my Synchro monsters. I do it all the time in this deck. If I don't do it, it's usually because my opponent is playing some silly back row to stop me. However, when I do get it off, this is an amazing card to be able to have. It's one of those under-the-radar cards most people don't even think about. What it does is that if there is a face-up Xyz monster on the field with a Synchro monster as Xyz material, I can target 1 card on the field and banish it. Then if I do, draw a card. That's amazing. It's a +1, I believe, if I'm doing that math correctly. Because it's -1 to use it, +1 to banish the monster, so now you're at 0, and then +1 to draw a card. So yeah, you +1 off this card every time. And since it's a quick play spell card, you can set it and activate it during your opponent's turn, which is, again, hilarious. I just enjoy the fact that this card works so well with this deck. Hopefully I'll be able to show you guys exactly how well it works in the near future, but more on that later. Next are my 1-ofs. 1 Foolish Burial to help get things in the graveyard faster. 1 Soul Charge for recovery. 1 Raigeki because screw my opponent's field. 1 Book of Moon because we all need a Swiss Army knife. And now for my back row hate. 2 MSTs because MST. And 1 Heavy Storm. I'm sorry, Release Restraint Wave. But for me, it's basically a better Heavy Storm. To some extent. The way that this card works is that you can select a face-up equip spell card I control and destroy it, and all face down. I'm sorry. You destroy it and all set spell and trap cards your opponent controls. So it's kind of like a more specific Harpy's Feather Duster with a cost, but with this deck it's pretty easy to pull off. The only catch is that if the equip spell falls off prior to the resolution of this effect, it doesn't go off. Something I found out the hard way, but you know, whatever. It still does its job. It's still a decent back row hate, and it's something to pull me over until we ever get Heavy Storm back. If we do, this is gone, but it's doing a good job until then. It's my own personal little Heavy Storm. That's it for the spell cards. On to the traps. Have 1 Compulsory Evacuation Device, 1 Bottomless Trapple, and 1 Torrential Tribute. Why? Because these to me are the holy trinity of trap cards. You kind of need to have them in every deck, but that's just me. It's usually kind of tossed around between these 3 and Solemn Warning. Solemn Warning's a bit pricey for my blood, so I tend not to get it, and I also don't really feel like the 2,000 life points is worth it all the time. There are times I would love to be able to stop a summon, but, you know. I have these 3, and they've been working well for me so far. And now to round off the deck, I have 2 copies of Phoenix Wing Windblast. This is a card I was waiting for Harpy's Harpist to come up before I could run it because I felt like I didn't have enough viable options prior to, but now I feel like I do have a good amount of options. The cost is that you discard 1 card, and the effect says that you can target 1 card your opponent controls and then place that target on top of the deck. So it doesn't destroy it, it just kind of resets your opponent a turn, if you will. Because then they have to redraw it. Unless it's an extra deck card, then obviously it just returns them to the extra deck, so it's basically a compulse at that point. But there's plenty of cards I can use in tandem with this. I can use NDF My Tuners, I can use Harpy's Harpist, I can use Zephyros, I can even use Card Trooper if I have a Debris Dragon ready to go. There's a good number of monsters I can use to pitch with this, so I feel justified in running it. This is actually one of the more quote-unquote light-sworniest decks I've ever had. At least variation on this deck, but that's it for the traps. I only run 5, not too many. Most of it's dedicated to spells to kind of help me OTK faster, so that those traps are just kind of there to help me survive until then. Now for the extra deck. As you guys have already seen, I do in fact run the necessary 3 Vajrayana. As I said, this is kind of your go-to synchro monster, but I didn't really go into great details of why. The reason for that is that when it's synchro summoned, you can do Dragunity stuff and equip a level 3 or lower dragon-type Dragunity monster to this card. So on top of being great for the Divine Lance OTK, this does also mean that Vajrayana is one of the best synchro ladder cards ever. Those who don't know what a synchro ladder is, it's where you synchro summon and then use that synchro monster to re-synchro summon. It's most commonly found in synchron decks, where they'll sync into one thing and then use that monster to get what they're actually going for because they have too many tuner monsters. But Dragunity Vajrayana is probably the best at it, because you can just Dux into Phalanx, sync for him, he gets Phalanx, and then you can go into any level 8 synchro monster. So he definitely does a good job. He's pretty reliable for me. And I also run 1 copy of Dragunity Knight Guide Urge. What he does is that he can, once per turn during your main phase, add 1 level 4 or lower dragon or winged beast type monster from your deck to your hand, then you discard a dragon or winged beast type monster of any level. That one doesn't matter. So you can either use this to just add something and then pitch it immediately, like a Phalanx or a Zephyros, or if you already have something in your hand that you would pitch, like the things I just mentioned, you can use it to search out a Dux or a Legionnaire or something. It's a pretty versatile little card and does help out a lot. Plus, it's hard to argue with 2400 attack. That's actually all I have in terms of Dragunity synchro monsters. The others aren't really anything special. I guess Skybulge is alright, but really only until you get better cards. Next up, I have 1 copy of Armades, just because Legionnaire can grab Phalanx, and I do like some synchro options, so he's my level 5 to go to. I was debating him with Samsara, but I feel like early game Samsara with this deck is not that great, so I'll just go with the one that's usually good year-round, if you will. Next up, I have my level 7 options, as I mentioned, for my Debris Dragon Card Trooper combos. That is 1 Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, which is one of my personal favorite cards. I think it's better than Black Rose just because it triggers on the summon. And it's only for level 5 or higher monsters, and on this card summon. But it bounces your opponent's monsters back to the hand. So it can really set your opponent back, especially since, unless it's a rank monster, a lot of these monsters are going to be having, like, they're going to be sent back. So as long as it's not an Xyz deck, Moonlight Rose Dragon will do a fine job. And even if it is an Xyz deck, they can't do anything about it on the summon. So it's a pretty helpful card to have. But my go-to level 7 is actually this guy, Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, another guy that came out of Cross Souls. This card is actually just hilariously good. What it does is that once per turn, if a level 5 or higher monster's effect activates, you can negate the activation and then destroy the card, and then this card gains attack equal to that card's attack. Also, if a level 5 or higher monster you control is targeted by a card's effect, you can again negate the activation and destroy it, and then this card gains attack equal to the attack the destroyed monster until the end of the turn. It's just so versatile with that, and I mean, it negates anything level 5 or higher, or anything that even tries to touch him, and then makes him stronger for it until the end phase, which is just, to me, amazing. It's such a versatile beatdown card, I knew I had to have him. Plus he's wind, and this is a wind deck, so it doesn't really matter, but it makes me feel better on the inside. Next up, 1 Stardust Dragon, because this has been the go-to 8-star synchro monster for Dragunities since Dragunities were a thing, and I'm going to keep on trucking with him. He's served me well all these years. However, his partner in crime, Scrap Dragon, has been replaced with Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, because this card is amazing, as I've come to find out. The way he works is that once per turn, during your main phase 1, you can destroy all other face-up attack position monsters on the field, but then only he can attack this turn. Well, whoop-de-flippin'-do, you basically just nuked the field, so you're going to get that free attack as long as back row doesn't have anything to say about it. And to me, that is infinitely better than what Scribe Dragon could do as long as you time it right. It, for me, was always just a better this is just a better option for me. And plus he's a bit bigger, so, you know. And also I am running 1 copy of Trident Dragon, because, like I said, this is a hilarious OTK. Those of you who don't know, he requires a Dragon Tuner and a Dragon Non-Tuner, and then when he is Synchro Summoned, because he can't be Special Summoned in other ways, you can destroy up to 2 cards that you control, and then he gains that many additional attacks this turn. So he can have upwards of 3 attacks, and he's at 3,000 beaters, so that's 9,000 damage we're talking. It's a lot of beats right there. Alright, now we move on to the Xyz lineup, because I do that as well. 1 Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer, because I can occasionally rank 4. It's rare that I can, but it does happen, so I like to have my options open for then. Castel's pretty solid for that. However, more often than not, I'm going into rank 6s. Let's go ahead and address those, shall we? 1 Gauntlet Launcher, because he can destroy up to 2 monsters per turn, and that is pretty helpful for clearing the way. 1 Photon Strike Bouncer, because who needs monster effects? 1 Hieratic Dragon King of a Tomb, because I like to be able to get out Red Eyes, and he is necessary for the Wombo combo. And 1 Constellar Ptolemy M7, because I like to be able to recycle my things, and 27 is kind of hard to argue with. But yeah, that's actually it for my extra deck lineup. So I'm sure you guys noticed I no longer run Mavelus or Instant Fusion, and that's because with Harpy's Harpist, I feel like really it's not necessary anymore. I can search out Ducks plenty, so I really don't need a extra deck space being taken up. Plus, with it there now, I'm actually able to run Trident Dragon again, as well as the Photon Strike Bouncer, who I was just side decking originally. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and get into my side deck, shall we? It's not a complete side deck, it's only 9 cards, but either way. I run 1 copy of Starlight Road because there are currently 3 Mass Destruction spells out there that I know of, that being the 2 Dark Holes and the Raigeki. So, that's... If I see enough of that going on, I know to side this guy in. And like I said, I do have access to the Stardust Dragon, so he is pretty helpful. I also run 2 copies of Mirror Force, just in case my opponent likes going in. I also have 2 Dimensional Prisons, in case my opponent likes going in and Destruction's a bad idea. 2 Breakthrough Skills, if my opponent's really digging the monster effects, and I am not. And finally, 2 Trap Stones, just in case my opponent loves them some back row. Most of the time I'm swapping these cards out for the Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, just because there's 2 of those, 2 of these, and the Wing Blast are honestly the most splashable ones I have that kind of fit my need. Wing Blast just kind of feels like a card that's good always, but these ones feel a bit more selective to me, so that's why I've decided to side them instead. But that is all that I have for you guys in the ways of this deck profile. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Is this a good profile? Is there anything I can do to improve on this deck? Those of you wondering, well, I don't really know. I haven't seen how it works. Fear not. For this Thursday, my Throwdown Thursday segment will be Dragunities again. I know I'm kind of going back and just kind of fanboying over them, but they are my favorite decks, so it was kind of inevitable that I would do this eventually. However, I've been getting a lot of requests for Throwdown Thursday and a couple of other segments, which I am looking into. I do appreciate the feedback. You guys know who you are. And don't worry, I will feature those decks. I just need some time to work on them, get them set up. So for now, I'm just going to be doing the one that I know how to do. And then the following week's Throwdown Thursday will be going back to the suggestions that you guys have left me. So continue to leave me suggestions. I greatly appreciate all of them. And until next time, peace.